Now moving on to our first fireside chat on redefining cloud migration opportunities for business growth. This session will highlight cloud ecosystem trends, market developments, and outlook. We will be understanding the business benefits of adopting cloud technology and how the next cloud technology will impact the entire ecosystem and not just businesses. To share industry insights, we have with us Sreeji Gopinathan, Chief Information Officer, Lupin Limited, Mukesh Rathi, Chief Information Officer, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, and the session will be chaired by M.V. Reddy, SVP and Head Cloud Services, Geo Platforms. Over to you, Mr. Reddy.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So, I am M.V. Reddy. I work as Head Cloud Services for Geo Platforms. So today we are going to discuss about cloud adoption in various industries. So I have Mr. Sreeji Gopinathan, who is a global CIO from Lupin, and joining me is Mr. Mukesh Rathi, Senior Vice President and Global CIO of Dr. Reddy Labs. So, before just starting our session, I'd like to set context here. So in last 2 years, we have seen the pace of digital transformation, which is supposed to happen in last 1 decade, has happened in last 2 years, especially cloud adoption. So cloud adoption has grown by almost 1.66, and India's average cloud adoption is much higher than world's average. In this context, I would like to ask Mr. Mukesh. Mukesh, COVID has changed the customer experience in every aspect of our lives. While industries are trying to match expectations of customers, what is one experience you think which is good and should be available even post-COVID or post-pandemic?
Sure, maybe I'll share both. I'll share one which is good and one I don't feel that good about. So, first of all, I think what is good is I think it's created flexibility in every aspect of experience, and that flexibility is around the hybrid experience. I think, and when I say hybrid, it is essentially whatever was mandatorily physical has sort of become the option to be either physical or digital, depending on the context. I think a very simple example from our industry is a visit to the doctor was always physical. And right. Now it could be digital if the context of the consultation one is looking at can be sort of managed without the doctor physically meeting you. And at times it could be physical as well if the context needs you to be physical. But I think this whole optionality of hybrid conversation, whether it is a doctor conversation, whether it is a PSR meeting, the doctor, even meetings which we do in office space, etc., I think has surely added a lot of flexibility to how we operate. That is something I like about what has come in, and I think it will stay. I don't think we will have a choice of deciding whether it will stay or not. I think it will stay, is my opinion. What I don't like, and I want to add that, is I think when I think about collaboration meetings, say 3-4 years back, I think it used to be of two nature. One used to be you would meet everybody together in a meeting room, face to face, and talk to each other. And once in a while, you would have what is called as a telecom. So there are people on the phone. So you know that you cannot see them, but you only hear their voice. Right. Now we have this whole Zoom and Teams section of the world where we are expected to do what we are doing right now, which is basically see each other and talk. But what I find is people join these meetings and don't put their videos on. So it's like a telecom with a picture, right? Right. I very strongly hate about what has got created over a period of time. And despite nudging, despite telling people, I think there are still a lot of people who, for whatever reason, don't feel comfortable coming onto video. Something I've started hating about. I mean, I just don't like talking to a screen with pictures.
So there will be some meetings, organizations have made it mandatory videos on. Some meetings at least, not if not all. All review calls this on any customer call, you ensure that video is on. It's like that.
I see that my kids are forced to switch it on when they are in the class. I think we need a teacher in every meeting.
Yes, they really need discipline. Especially kids need the discipline to be enforced by them.
So you said it, Sreeji, yeah? So.
Yeah, Sreeji, actually, I heard that Lupin has started a chatbot for the first time in the country. So can you just give some light on that?
Did you say chatbot?
Yes, right. I read somewhere.
Yeah. So the chatbot actually was there even before the pandemic. The Anya chatbot was launched probably 3 years, 4 years ago, something like that.
Okay.
So it started off as one particular therapy where messenger chat could be done with the chatbot, and it's verified information that is provided through this. And there is obviously a machine learning algorithm as well behind that. And now it is there for a couple of different therapies. For example, respiratory therapy. If you want to talk about COPD or asthma or whatever, if you want to find out more information about this, you can just go to at Anya chatbot in Messenger, and you can ask the questions, and you should get a pretty good response. So there are millions of chats that is happening on it, and there are multiple languages also. So 7 or 8 Indian languages are already in it. Other non-Indian languages are also being considered. So yeah, so basically, it is about information dissemination in a responsible manner. That's what the chatbot does, and that same principle is now being extended to other areas as well. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thanks for explaining us about the chatbot. So I want to understand about what kind of workloads, IT workloads of your organization has already moved on to cloud, and what kind of challenges you have faced while adapting this digital transformation or cloud transformation. Just to explain all of this, Sreeji.
You see, pharma as a sector, and I think especially Indian pharma as a sector probably has been a little behind in this journey compared to some of the other sectors. And the good news is that we are fast catching up and probably leapfrogging some of those initiatives in our organizations. And in pharma, when we do something, we tend to do it properly, right? So that's a good thing. So what's happened over the last couple of years is many applications that we were looking to create or buy. Strategy has been to look at cloud as much as possible, unless there is a specific need which could be coming out of network quality for a particular location, maybe, or some regulatory implications that might be there. So there might be different reasons why we will go to on-prem sort of setup. Otherwise, we will try and move to a cloud setup as much as possible. However, I don't think we are at a cloud unless situation yet. There are still a lot of workloads which are not in the cloud. So what has actually gone onto the cloud is the typical data lake type of thing, or Microsoft Office 365, as you already know, that is in the cloud. Anything and everything that is there, which is not so intrusive as far as the manufacturing and the product quality is concerned. We try and move to the cloud as much as possible. Okay. Having said that, we went to S/4HANA recently, but we decided not to go on cloud. For multiple reasons. So for one, it is the data volumes that we have, and we did not have enough proof points to give us comfort that it is going to work okay. So most of the SMEs are going into cloud when they go on S/4HANA, but the large enterprises with huge workload, the volume of data, the confidence is still not there. And also the cloud environments that could be given for that kind of sizes are also initially, when we were looking at it, was a challenge to be provided in the India geography. Finally, it could be made available. So it really depends. I don't want to put a number as such. So we are taking a look at each of the requirement, and then we decide whether we can go on cloud or not. Obviously, going on cloud gives a lot of advantages in terms of not needing to manage the infra and other aspects around it. But from a security point of view, we still have to manage it proactively. There is sometimes an assumption that when we go to cloud, security is taken care of automatically, which is not necessarily true. So I think we have to have a very clear cloud security policy, procedures, and how do you manage that proactively and make sure that you are indeed managing it proactively and not assuming that things are going to be taken care of. So there are these kind of aspects to be looked at. Now, you also asked about the digital transformation.
Any key challenge?
Sorry?
Any key challenge while doing this?
Challenge. So, when you look at digital transformation at large, the challenges usually is about, as an organization, we want to go and leverage the power of digital and digital transformation. But when you get into it, you will see all the different data sources that is needed is probably not fully digitized. So that's the primary challenge that you will face. You want to go and digitalize the data as much as possible. You might have a ERP data, you might have some LIMS data, but then what about the other data that you will need from the line or the lab or whatever we're talking about? You will then have to put some sensors or actuators or and then also probably you might need a IoT sort of a platform to have certain consolidation nearer to the source so that you can run the algos nearer to the source and then take the corrective action or whatever action you want to drive on the particular process as quickly as possible. So the challenge is basically data source, data availability, data integrity, data normalization. So it's everything around the data. Is the biggest challenge. Okay. The second challenge is capability. And when I say capability, it is not just the capability of the IT organization or the tech organization or the digital organization, but also the organization at large. Sometimes to have conversations beyond a dashboard or a report takes time for people to really look at, okay, what are we really looking at? How do you leverage this data and what kind of analytics can you do? Or a digital tool like a AR or VR or digital twin can do for that particular process. That kind of conversation also is not so easy when the organization has not even looked at it in the past. So there is a question of how do you build capability across the organization so that it becomes a function-driven, business-driven program and not just a tech-driven program, right? So that's the second biggest challenge that you have. And in this, the challenge, the tech department challenge is probably the biggest. There is a huge shortage of these kind of talent
resources.
Yeah, so that is also a pretty difficult one that we're trying to deal with. Yeah.
Okay. So quickly coming back to Mukesh, just want to understand your experience or your organization's workloads currently on cloud and what kind of challenges you are faced by doing this transformation.
Sure. So I think I agree with everything Sreeji mentioned. But just to add my perspective and the journey we are on onto this. So I think about 3 years back or so, we made first time a comprehensive cloud strategy as to what would it look like and where do we want to be. And we made a conscious choice that every decision we take from now, and those decisions could be in the form of refresh, could be in the form of new tech, new tools we are developing or new applications we are buying. Our default should be cloud, unless XYZ, unless something is not allowing it to be. So that's a conscious sort of decision we made, and we are on that journey. And we also took a target. We said that by FY25 is when we as a company should be 70% plus on cloud.
Yeah? 70% plus on cloud. Okay.
On public cloud. So that's a sort of aspiration statement we make so that there's a direction in which we are going. And then we put certain sort of governance around it that every time somebody is trying to buy a physical server or any form of physical infrastructure in this company, it comes all the way for my approval so that I know why there is a good reason we are doing that. So that was sort of one decision point in our life. When I look at our overall cloud landscape, I would probably divide it into three buckets. Okay, one bucket is infrastructure. Okay, and in terms of infrastructure, as I said, we sort of make choices every time we are due for refresh or there is something new we are picking up. Example, last couple of years we reworked our overall backup and DR strategy, and as part of that, we moved significant workloads to the cloud around backup and disaster recovery as a conscious choice. Right, and as I sort of mentioned before, around refresh of tech, etc. is one piece. So that is sort of one bucket. The second bucket is around certain strategic choices we are making on our digital transformation journey, and there we have sort of decided to be 100% cloud. So whether it comes to data lakes, all my data lakes are onto one hyperscale provider.
Okay.
And actually, that decision, which we took like about 4 years back, has helped us a lot onto our overall data and analytics journey. Likewise, all the new platforms which we are creating, especially the ones which are market facing, we've decided to keep them by default on the cloud because it helps us the best and the latest available, add on services as and when we like, of course, the benefit of scale, the way we would like to. And also some default benefits around you don't have to worry about maintaining the infrastructure, doing a backup, doing a DR, security, all of that. So that's the second space. And third is around application choices. So as and when now we are sort of making new application choices from the last few years, there is an active consideration for a SaaS. And SaaS by default is a managed application. Somebody else is managing the infrastructure for that. And in our internal scheme of things, in terms of evaluation, we've started giving some higher weightage to SaaS providers on-prem providers. So those are the three dimensions on which we are moving. And of course, there is a lot more to do as we go from here. You also sort of asked about
challenges.
I think one challenge Sreeji referred to is security. I think the whole space of security on the cloud is evolving. And there's a lot more to be learned by both providers as well as organizations like us. I think we sort of assume things to be taken care of, but they are not so. And hence security sort of continues to be a challenge. The second challenge is probably the tech itself. There are certain applications, needs, etc. The tech is not yet lending itself to be available. For example, the latency one can live with for a manufacturing execution system in the plant. So the current tech does not allow for us to move to the cloud. We don't have a choice but to keep it on premise. So that is that I would probably call it the second challenge.
So just more curious to know, I mean, this is for both of you. Is it still that you don't put any of your R&D data on cloud? Still R&D is kept on-prem, R&D data? To Sreeji?
So as I said, all my data lakes are on the cloud.
Okay.
And I effectively use electronic lab notebook data to run lot of analytics on it. And all of it is on the cloud. So there is no restriction. There is no restriction like that.
Yeah.
There are certain places, there is a tech restriction. It could be latency, it could be some compliance need where cloud get ready. I think, but for those, I don't think there is any restriction. So.
Yeah, it's the same here. I don't think we have any policy like no R&D. No, that's not the way. It really depends on different other factors, like Mukesh was saying. Sometimes the EBMR, EBPR he gave. LIMS also is a challenge sometimes. To put some of the sites. If it is not working, then the quality process gets stuck, right? So to rely on the network quality or the redundancies that we have, even if we have 3 links, sometimes it goes down, all of them, right? That kind of scenarios plus latency challenges still, makes us hesitate a lot before we can take those kind of workloads in the cloud. And R&D also, it's a similar approach. You take a practical look at what is possible, what is not possible, and then take a decision.
Sure, Sreeji. So just one more question to you, Sreeji. See, what happens is every cloud service provider has their own assessment frame. And what is the right way to assess IT infra as end customer, actually?
You mean in terms of
cloud readiness assessment?
Terms of cloud readiness? Is that what you mean?
Yes, including infra, right?
Yeah. So see, when my first statement is that you just stick to the fundamentals and keep it as simple as possible. You need to first understand, what are the kind of infrastructure and applications that you have. How many of them are there? How many of them are in a situation where it can be scalable? Ease of modification. So many of the applications you cannot straight away put in the cloud. So you need to look at and assess how easy or difficult it is to modify that particular application. Is it in a stage where we can actually do that kind of modification and repurpose, or is it in a situation that we actually have to repair it and probably we need to get another application for the same functionality which can be put on the cloud? So that kind of assessment needs to be done. Then there are also other factors like volume, as I talked about, volume of users, volume of data, the interactions that application is having with other internal and external applications and stakeholders that is out there. So there are multiple of these things that needs to be looked at before you say, okay, these are the ones that I want to target that moving to the cloud. Then, you also look at what kind of databases do you have? What kind of storage do you have? That also plays an important role in terms. So the next level beyond the application, you need to look at that as well, whether that is possible. And then there are also potential dependency maps. This application or this database has certain dependency with particular other process, which may not be the main purpose of this application, but there are dependencies of data to and fro. And that kind of understanding also needs to be put in place. What happens if I take just this to cloud, whereas the dependency of the others are sitting in on-prem? What happens in that scenario? That kind of analysis needs to be done. And then beyond that, it is all about planning this in detail in terms of what are the transition plans. How do you go through that process step by step? Do you go for single cloud? Do you go for a multi-cloud kind of strategy? And then how should this look like? As Mukesh was saying earlier, this particular ecosystem that has been looked at from an end-to-end point of view, how will that look like in the future? So that kind of, you start with the full list, you then drill down into the application layer, database layer, storage layer, dependency layer, and then you figure out, okay, where you want to target, what you could, which is basically ready now, and then what you could target next year and the year after, so that you achieve, the targets and the strategies that you want to go after. So that's a very simple, straightforward process that I would take to assess this.
So next question to you, Mukesh. So we see a lot of trend in hybrid cloud, right? Especially on-prem plus public cloud, or on-prem plus public cloud plus private cloud. That's a new adoption. So we'd like to understand your views, your feedback on this.
Sure. So I will share my views, but these are personal views. Yeah, I'm not sure if these are factually correct or the right things to say. Okay.
Your perspective.
My personal view on this is the end state for all of us is public cloud, 100% public. Yeah. Everything else we are doing is sort of trying to manage the transition. Okay. The very reason why cloud makes sense, right? Whether you call about scale, flexibility, efficiency, best of processes, all of that.
Elasticity,
the better you. And all the hyperscale providers are getting bigger and bigger as we speak. So they will, So that's the end state. Now, when we will go to that end state, is it 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? I don't answer. And as I said, everything else we are doing, private plus public, on-prem plus private plus public, is in some form, trying to manage the transition. Okay. Now, there are two parts to the whole thing again. One I already mentioned. There are some places the tech is not ready. Technology is not ready. So we still have a latency issue. We still have some regulatory issues which the cloud providers are not yet able to solve. So there, as of today, you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice but to remain on-prem, and you will continue to remain on-prem. There are some places where regulatory environment does not allow. For example, there are certain data points in my environment. I would like to keep a local copy.
Okay.
For when I do DR, etc., because that's the way my current regulatory setup is. Okay. So while I will still do a copy on the cloud, but I will still do a local copy. So something, but for these two scenarios, my personal opinion is everything else is transition. At some point in time, we will all be 100% public. So.
Okay. Thanks, Mukesh. So Sreeji, I want your quick comments or your perspective on about hybrid cloud.
Yeah. So I agree with what Mukesh is saying. See, if you really look at cloud, the biggest advantage that it kind of gives us is flexibility. Yeah, you scale up, scale down, and also the scope of innovation because of that goes up, without getting into a long-term commitment on the infrastructure that we need to make, right? So so basically, if let's say you have an idea, and it could be a digital transformation idea or whatever, yeah, and you want to try that out.
Right.
You use cloud to do this kind of proof of concepts, and prove the point, and then if you then want to take it to production, maybe that will be in cloud, or maybe for practical reasons we might have to take it on-prem. But the innovation and flexibility that the cloud offers is immense, in my opinion. So that's the number one thing. Second thing is that a multi-cloud or a hybrid cloud, what it really does is risk mitigation. You're not putting all of your eggs in one basket. So, for example, in terms of outage, if your public cloud instance that you are in, it has an instance, and you are not impacting everything which is out there. So it enables you to spread the risk to a great extent. And on the other hand, if you're not multi-cloud, and if you're on a single cloud, then there is an over dependency on one vendor, and that directly or indirectly, I have seen also in practice, it affects your power of influence in terms of negotiation. Beyond a certain point, so there is a technical over dependency, and there is also a commercial over dependency that will come, and it becomes difficult to manage beyond a particular size. But when it is a single cloud, talent management is a lot more easier. You can focus your energies in one sort of cloud, where people become a lot more expert, rather than trying to spread your organization across multiple clouds. So from that aspect, the cost management also becomes a little bit more easier. Not that in hybrid cloud it is much more complicated, but it is a little bit more easier to do that. Again, security is another point that we talked about. You have a strategy which can be applied for one particular cloud. The strategy might apply for the other cloud as well, but the way you implement is going to change. So again, it has an impact on the resources that you need, etc. So all these kind of indirectly, what I'm saying is hybrid cloud has its advantages, but the disadvantage is there is an operational overhead that you have to take, when you want to go in that direction. Yeah, so that's what it is. But there are certain when you are looking at a public cloud and a SaaS kind of setup that you might end up, there might be certain solutions where you will have a scenario that particular solution works in a cloud A provider, because that's how they have come about and evolved as that particular solution. Yeah, and then you will have to go with that, rather than trying to make it work with your other cloud.
Thanks, Sreeji. Yes, I'll take just last questions. While you know that cloud is scalable or has very, very cost-efficient solution, this question is to Mukesh. So what are the real-time benefits of adapting to cloud? We have, I think, 2 minutes left or 3 minutes left. Quick answer from you, Mukesh.
Sure. So I think the first and foremost is flexibility. I think Sreeji already was referring to it. I think it allows you to start at a scale you like, add as you like, grow as you like, scale down as you like, shut down if you like, without much obligation which you are creating. I think the second and bigger benefit to me is innovation. It allows for you the access to every possible innovation the hyperscale providers are creating. Bunch of services they continue to generate and make them available on a day-to-day basis. And hence your ability to sort of easily tap into each one of them and use them as and when you sort of need it. So, I mean, one good example is, I think, because I have my data lakes on the cloud, if we decide, and it has happened to us, that we need to run a very, very high workload algorithm over the weekend. You just sort of buy that service for 3 days and then run it over the weekend and get your solution and move on, which is sort of near to impossible if you were to do it on-prem environment, etc. So I think it allows for innovation. And of course, the other benefits we spoke about around scale, around better management of security, disaster recovery, backup management, less operational overhead, etc.
And you also save time, right? So that is Thanks, Mukesh. Thanks, Sreeji, for sharing your thoughts and experience to all the audience here. So Mukesh is very clear. I think he has a very clear mandate for his organization. I think in the next 3 years' time, he'll shift 70% of his workloads on public cloud. That's really good, interesting. And we also understood the challenges related to security, availability, manpower, etc. And Sreeji, and I really like your insight when you go on hybrid cloud, because you don't want to depend on only one vendor, single clouds. Good insight. So thanks for both of you for sharing your perspective.
Thank you all. And it is true that businesses can set their cloud migrations on a stronger foundation by following the example of outperformers. But providers and partners must do their part as well.